The first one relates to a habit that most people have, including us. When I say this, see if this is true of you. We try to make things be how we think they should be. What would happen if parents could do that to babies while they're in the womb? And yet, most people try to fit things into their rigid ideas, their pre-established molds. Have you all heard of the Chinese custom of foot binding? Yeah, it's like that. So, in that custom, they wrap the girls' feet tightly to keep them from growing. And do you know that by the 19th century, this foot binding was applied to almost 100% of upper-class Chinese girls. It was extremely painful and very limiting. Feet symbolize understanding. The word in English shows that under us, and standing, understanding, feet. So this kind of foot binding and trying to keep things in a pre-established mold is exactly what most people do, probably including us, to God's creations. We confine them to our very limited and small understanding that's prevalent in society. So, our pre-established molds actually spoil God's creation. So the true birth cannot occur. And just like parents have no control over what babies will be like when they're born, what's coming from heaven is already designed. Most people think they have to design the vision. Isn't that right? So there is some part that we do rightly design, but it's usually how we implement heaven's design. Do you have any idea how many times Eugen and I have adjusted our vision of what can happen in Korea? Many times. But what people often do is they have an initial inspiration from heaven, and they hold on to that first perception, first idea, fiercely. And they think that is being true to heaven's inspiration. But to be true to heaven's inspiration, we have to be true moment by moment by moment. Because what heaven is bringing is changing to accommodate changes on many levels. Changes including in circumstances and what's happening in people. So our rigid ideas, even if it was our first divine inspiration, and we know it was heaven's inspiration, they actually block what heaven is trying to give birth to. And honestly, our ideas and even perceptions are invariably smaller than heaven's, and they don't take as much into account of the whole picture. 맞아요? So here's an example. I think most of you know how much I love our home here in Gugidong. Do you know when we first visited here, I rejected it? It was old. And it smelled like a home of Thomas Jefferson I visited, 200 years old in Virginia. And I was concerned that the hill up here was too steep for people to want to visit. And there weren't many restaurants nearby with food that I liked, etc., etc., dung, 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 dung. So I rejected it because it didn't fit the mold of my ideas. Fortunately, I let go and began to see with new eyes. And honestly, every day I feel thankful for this quiet, beautiful sanctuary. It helps Eugen and me connect with heaven's inspiration. It also helps us keep balance amidst the high pressure of our lives. Its surround of nature, mountains, forests, cats, even roosters, constantly refresh us, and flowers. Thanks to Eugen. So if I had not let go of my first objection, imagine how much Eugen and I, but also you, would have missed. So the second part of how we can create naturally, we can summarize as this: continually open to heaven's design. Continually. All right, the third part of how to create naturally is we have to align with God's spirit and law. God's spirit doesn't condemn. God's spirit is not critical. It doesn't blame. God's spirit accepts things as they are, because things as they are provide the environment into which the divine birth is to come. So that statement is important enough, I want to repeat it. God's spirit accepts things as they are because things as they are provide the environment. They provide the actual environment into which the divine birth is to come. It wouldn't make sense, would it, to try to give birth to something into an environment that does not exist. So, we accept the environment that does exist just the way it is. So I want to share something that Martin said about this. And I'm going to try to imitate how he said it, because how he said it really made me laugh. It isn't a matter of looking around and saying, well, I can see that's worthy of condemnation, and the other thing is worthy of being judged adversely, but I'm not going to do it. I'm going to be good. I'm not going to do it. But the point is, you've already seen it. It's already been your attitude. Yeah. You can see why I laughed. So, accepting things as they are does not mean we do nothing to change them. Obviously, that's the reason why we're here on earth, to transform human designs into heaven's design. But how we do that makes all the difference. And I'll touch more on that in a moment. The deep habit of most people is this. When things are not complete, they're still working out, people tend to see them as bad. Ajayo? That's right, isn't it? All right? But in hindsight, we can often look back on our own lives and on the lives of people close to us, and we can see everything eventually worked out to bring us to good. So not only was the end good, but all the parts leading to that completion and end were also good. So this is a real change in how most people perceive things. Not only is the end finally good. No, it was good all the way through. Because if it hadn't been for all those things, no matter how bad they seemed, we would not have reached the point of completion. So all of those things were part of the birth. They were all part of the process by which truth comes forth. In essence, dissolving what's false, and so that what's true can be born. So, when we stop condemning, we begin to see things as evolving. There's a change working out. including in our own consciousness. A change in how we see things. So we begin to align our attitude with God's Spirit. And there's a reason for this. Because this is the way by which what's in heaven may be born on earth. By God's Spirit. Not by being critical. Accepting what's present. Not insisting circumstances be different. But into this very circumstance, just like it is, cooperate with the evolving process for what heaven is bringing to be born in the earth. In other words, cooperate with the one law. The law of love, we also call it.